Der ehemalige NATO-Generalsekretär Jens Stoltenberg löste mit seinem Vorstoß, die Ukraine müsste Gebietsabtretungen zustimmen für Friedensverhandlungen, eine Welle der Empörung in den Westmedien aus. Der ukrainische Präsident Wladimir Selenskij protestierte umgehend. Kiew werde keinen Gebietsabtretungen zustimmen. Stoltenbergs Nachfolger als NATO-Generalsekretär Mark Rutte reiste als eine seiner ersten Amtshandlungen nach Kiew, um Selenskij die weitere Unterstützung der NATO zuzusichern. Wie siehst du diese Angelegenheit? Woher kommen auf einmal die Diskussionen um mögliche ukrainische Gebietsabtretungen im Westen? Und wie lange wird die NATO sich noch so fest an die Ukraine klammern?
I couldn't think of three more irrelevant people to talk about Ukraine's future than Zelensky, Stoltenberg, and Rutte. I mean, you got the non-president of Ukraine, you've got the former Secretary General of NATO, and you got the current Secretary General of NATO. None of their opinions matter. Ukraine blew the opportunity to have it negotiated into this conflict. They will negotiate their unconditional surrender by signing whatever document Russia puts before them when Russia decides the conflict is going to end, and only then. Negotiations happen when you have some leverage. Ukraine has no leverage over Russia. Russia has invested so many lives and so much money into achieving the status it has right now on the cusp of total victory. Why would they give it away at the negotiating table to a Nazi named Zelensky? So let's stop talking about Ukraine and giving a damn about what Ukraine thinks. They don't matter. It's just a nation that's going to die. That's it. And NATO is an organization that is dying. I mean, I just laugh every time I hear Stoltenberg and Rutte speak about, the need for 500,000 men. We're going to build a 350,000. With what? You're a failed organization. You've lost the war in Ukraine. And when that final realization hits home, your organization will collapse from within, because nobody will have trust, faith, and confidence in anything you stand for, because you stand for nothing but war, death, and destruction. Europe is starting to realize that it made a fatal mistake buying into the American-led war in Ukraine against Russia. A fatal mistake. It's destroying your economies. You stand for nothing. Look at your moral compass. You literally supported Nazis. Literally supported Nazis. You are the scum of the earth because you supported the scum of the earth. And maybe Europeans are starting to realize, oops, we were lied to. We made a mistake. And that's the end of NATO. What's going to happen to the European Union? I don't know. It doesn't look too healthy either. The very European cause that this war in Ukraine was supposed to be defending. Fight the Russians there so we don't have to fight them here. What stupidity. Russia was never coming to Europe with anything other than a hand of friendship and cheap energy. You slap the hand away, you cut yourselves off from the cheap energy, and then you promoted murderers in Russia's back door or next door to come in and start killing Russians. No, they don't matter. There's only one voice that matters. That's the voice of Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation. And at the time and place of his choosing, he will opt to end this conflict on terms that are acceptable to Russia. That's the only thing that matters. The West blew it. We can sit here and fantasize about things. Imagine if NATO and the West hadn't turned down the Russian offer for peace, the negotiated peace settlement, the Istanbul Declaration. Imagine if they had accepted it back in April of 2022, where we'd be today. Imagine if they had put pressure on Zelensky back in June when Vladimir Putin put a similar offer on the table, instead of slapping it aside and rejecting it. Now today they're staring the abyss in the face. They have lost this war. There's nothing left that they can do except die. And that's the only option they have other than absolute unconditional surrender. Death or surrender. That's it. So no one cares about what Stoltenberg says. No one cares about what Rutte says. Rutte will probably go down in history as the last Secretary General of NATO, because NATO's not going to survive the absolute defeat it suffered in Ukraine.
Innerhalb der NATO zeigen sich deutliche Risse. So kündigte der slowakische Ministerpräsident Robert Fico an, im kommenden Jahr zum Tag des Sieges nach Moskau reisen zu wollen. In einer Rede betonte er, Europa braucht Russland und Russland braucht Europa. Fico hat sich zum Ziel gesetzt, die diplomatischen Beziehungen zu Russland wieder auszubauen und zu verbessern. Ebenso hält es Ungarn. Der ungarische Außenminister Péter Szijjártó rechnete Ende September in der UN-Generalversammlung deutlich mit der Politik des Westens im Ukraine-Konflikt ab. Die Waffenlieferungen haben die Menge der Waffen auf beiden Seiten der Frontlinie nur erhöht, was zu mehr Opfern und einer Verlängerung des Krieges geführt hat. Droht der Ukraine-Konflikt die NATO zu sprengen? Wie lange noch werden sich Länder wie Slowakei und Ungarn den US-Interessen unterordnen?
I think the answer is that NATO is fracturing. And again, I've said clearly that when the reality of the defeat in Ukraine becomes manifest, and the surrender document that Russia will dictate to Ukraine, and by extension the West, I think that's the end of NATO. I think Europe will realize that it has bought into a bag of goods, that they give nothing to it. This war has destroyed the European economy. It's destroyed Europe's credibility. It's destroyed European unity, all in the name of American hegemony. So one by one, you'll start to see nations peel off. We see Hungary, we see Slovakia, but you're going to see already in France, Emmanuel Macron's questioning the continued subordination of Europe to the United States. Olaf Scholz is having a dramatic come to Jesus moment where he realizes everything he's done in Ukraine has been a failure and that he himself is a failure. And so we see him suddenly switching from we will stand next to Ukraine for as long as it takes to Ukraine better give up territory for peace. And since Olaf Scholz has no credibility, I mean, hey, Olaf, call Vlad, see if he picks up the phone. Oh, he won't answer your call. I wonder why. Because you suck. You're the leader of a nation that's done nothing but lie, and lie again. All Germans need to understand that because of Angela Merkel, because of Olaf Scholz, you're a nation of liars. Your diplomats have no credibility, none. I mean, you have a foreign minister that you're still allowed to be foreign minister, even though she said that she's going to continue to give Ukraine weapons, ammunition, and support, even if the German people don't want her to. Guess you're not a democracy either, are you, Germany? But I think there's hope. I think we're starting to see the German people come around. We see the rise of, opposition parties that are becoming not the opposition, but the mainstream. Alternative for Deutschland is doing quite well at the polls. And so is the party of, can't remember her name right now, but the lady that broke away from Wagenknecht, Sarah Wagenknecht, her party's doing quite well as well. It's the end of the left party, the end of the Greens, the end of the the Christian Democrats, and it's the rise of Germans who care about Germany, who care about liberty, who care about freedom, who care about economic well-being, and who aren't willing to be the slaves of American imperialism. So I think it's all over for NATO, and it may be all over for the European Union. And this is a good thing because neither NATO nor the European Union have done anything good, positive for Europe. All they've done is destroy Europe. And maybe it's time for Europe to go back to being what it was, a collective of sovereign nations that, shared a common history, but have separate cultures, separate identities, separate languages.
Die US-Präsidentschaftskandidatin Kamala Harris hat am Montag deutlich gemacht, dass sie keine Friedensverhandlungen mit dem russischen Präsidenten Wladimir Putin führen werde. Gleichzeitig versicherte sie, dass allein die Ukraine über ihr Schicksal entscheiden dürfe. Harris wirft dem republikanischen Präsidentschaftskandidaten Donald Trump vor, mit seiner Redensart vom schnellen Friedensschluss in Wahrheit eine Kapitulation der Ukraine zu meinen. Aus ihrer Sicht helfen die USA lediglich der Ukraine, sich gegen den unprovozierten Angriff Russlands zu verteidigen. Was sagst du zu den Standpunkten von Harris? Plant sie tatsächlich, die Ukraine immer weiter zu unterstützen? Und setzt Trumps Plan die Kapitulation der Ukraine voraus?
Well, you know who doesn't matter even more than Stoltenberg and Rutte and Zelensky? Harris and Trump. Russia doesn't care. Russia doesn't care about them. Russia's going to do what Russia's going to do. I mean, the stupidity of Harris to think that she's going to continue the failed policy of Biden and get any other result. I mean, what's that old saying that was given to Einstein? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. I mean, she thinks doubling down on stupid is good, throwing good money after bad. I mean, she's irrelevant. I can pretty much guarantee that the Russian foreign ministry is not burning the midnight oil trying to figure out how they're going to have to deal with a Kamala Harris administration when it comes to conflict termination terms regarding Ukraine. They assume that America will continue to throw money into Ukraine. That's okay. The Russians burn that money. They assume America will continue to provide political support for Ukraine. How has that worked out for Zelensky? I mean, how much more money can Kamala Harris give them on top of what we already gave them? How much more military equipment can we throw away? It hasn't changed the outcome, and that's not going to change the outcome. And here's a news flash for Kamala and Trump. Ukraine's energy-producing infrastructure is non-existent. We are approaching the long, cold months of winter. Ukraine is going to freeze to death. And whatever's left that thaws out in the spring isn't going to be looking to the United States for more handouts. They're going to be desperately looking for Russia to bring an end to this war. That's the reality. And Russia has invested too much manpower and treasure into achieving this result to let Donald Trump undo it with one magic phone call. Like Vladimir Putin's just waiting there. God, I can't wait till Donald calls me. He doesn't care. He'll take the call because it's the president. But he's not going to change anything. He's not going to do anything different. Russia's already made a determination that America is the enemy, regardless of who the president is. Now, Russia doesn't want to have a war, but Russia's not going to bend over backwards to make America its friend because Russia knows that America isn't its friend. The American people are infected with the disease of Russophobia. And so long as the American people continue to be ignorant about everything there is to know about Russia, American politicians will feed off of that ignorance and promulgate policies that reflect that ignorance. The Russians know this. There's no, false hope of a Trump presidency that's going to change everything, or of a Harris presidency that has a new approach to problem solving. As far as the Russians are concerned, it's America. And America's the problem. And they don't care anymore. Russia has the Russian solution. At the end of this month, there's going to be a meeting in Kazan, Russia, BRICS. Let's see what comes out of that. Because that's going to be, I think, that has the potential to be a geopolitical game-changing event of historic proportions. Because we will see manifested before our very eyes the actual transformation of the world from a singularity of American hegemony to a multipolar world, consensus-driven, where Russia, China, and India are sitting at the head of a very large table, like King Arthur in the round table, the knights of the round table. That's the future, not one person dictating an outcome to all. And remember, I just want to remind people, just in case you forgot, American hegemony isn't based upon the notion of America trying to do good by the rest of the world. We don't like the rest of the world. We hate the rest of the world because we abuse the rest of the world. You exist solely to feed resources to the American economic engine so that we can continue to sustain a lifestyle we can't afford. That's your job. It's a pure colonial relationship. And I'm saying that to every single one of you in the world. I wish it was different, but you need to wake up to the fact that the greatest evil that walks the face of the earth today is the United States, because we don't do good. Name one thing we've reached out and touched and cured in the last 30 years since the end of the Cold War. One thing, and you can't. Everything we touch dies.
Der US-Unternehmer und Multimilliardär Elon Musk warnte vor kurzem vor der revolutionierenden Rolle, welche die Drohnentechnologie für die moderne Konflikt- und Kriegsführung einnehmen wird. Musk betonte, die zukünftigen Kriege sind Drohnenkriege und Drohnenschwarmschlachten werden kommen, die uns alle verblüffen werden. Was ist deine Ansicht zu dem Thema? Teilst du die Einschätzungen von Elon Musk? Werden die zukünftigen Kriege Drohnenkriege sein? Welche Rolle nehmen Drohnen in der modernen Kriegsführung ein?
I mean, we're seeing a revolution in military art. When I came in the Marine Corps, we just started playing with what we called the Pioneer, which was an Israeli drone. We incorporated it, and we were starting to experiment with how to use it as a communications relay platform, reconnaissance platform, battlefield support platform. And then the Pioneer turned into the Predator, and the Predator we armed and we put weapons on it, and suddenly we have a battle system. And then we used it for large scale reconnaissance, the Global Hawk and others. We have the Beast of Kandahar, the stealth drone, and so it sort of became this really cool support weapon. At the battlefield level, we would launch them for, over the horizon, reconnaissance and things of that nature. But in terms of a weapon system, it was, the MQ-9 Reaper or something of that nature, hovering around, firing Hellfire missiles. But we couldn't bring that into a modern battlefield because it gets shot down. And that was sort of where we were stuck. We were trapped. That's where the whole world was trapped until the Ukraine-Russian conflict came up. And then what happened is, in this attrition warfare, both the Ukrainians and the Russians started adapting. They realized that big platforms like the Turkish platform that was provided to Ukraine, or like the Russians' own Orion platforms, etc., were very vulnerable to modern air defense systems. But at the tactical level, they started to adapt these small commercial drones. Initially for reconnaissance use, but then they started putting weapons on them, first dropping mortars or grenades, and then stuffing plastic explosive with a impact fuse, or putting, a shaped charge on there, and just swarming the battlefield. And this has changed everything, how everybody works. Artillery can no longer mass fires, because if you put all your artillery pieces in one place, the drones will come out and kill you. Tanks can no longer do massed attacks because the drones will come out and kill the tanks. The drones are part of the fire support plan now, and it's brought it down. I've watched as, the Russians from a, institutional started using drones as a, brigade level support. And then they'd break it down, and then they had their standalone drone battalions attached to areas. But now each battalion has its own support. Each company has its own. Platoons have a drone section that advances with them and provides immediate fire support. Drones are used for electronic warfare. If you haven't integrated and trained for drones to be part of every aspect of the war going forward, you're going to lose the next war, because that's the reality of modern warfare. This is every bit as transformational as the machine gun was, as the tank was. This changes everything. Your tactics have to change. You can't have troops group up because one drone comes in and kills. That's why you watch when the Russians advance, or even the Ukrainians advance. It's in small groups of men. And, they've had to reorganize, so they have somebody scanning the skies for drones the whole time. They're coming up with new anti-drone weapons, but drones have changed warfare dramatically. And I would say this: there's only two armies in the world today that could survive on the modern battlefield when an enemy puts the full capability of drones before, and that's the Ukrainians and the Russians. This NATO army that's being trained will find themselves all dead, dying or wounded or running, scattered to the winds, if they try to go to war against a drone armed enemy, because I guess you can't describe it till you've experienced it. And the Russians have experienced it. They understand it. It's part of their lives. They've adapted to it. So have the Ukrainians. Nobody in the West has.
Kannst du da bitte ins Detail gehen? Wie groß ist der Vorsprung Russlands in der Drohnenentwicklung aufgrund der praktischen Erfahrungen des Ukraine-Kriegs? Wird Russland seine Fortschritte mit seinen militärischen Partnern wie zum Beispiel dem Iran teilen? Und kann der Westen den Rückstand gegenüber Russland bei der Drohnenerfahrung wieder aufholen?
I would say that Russia has, in terms of the broad spectrum of drone experience, that they have the most experience of anybody in the world. Ukraine is a close second, though. Ukraine is very knowledgeable, and they've adapted their tactics, and they've come up with some innovations. And the West would do well to have people attached to Ukrainian units at the tactical level to absorb these lessons and bring them back. But that's very dangerous. But it would be nice from a Western perspective if we would take some of these Ukrainian drone operators and bring them to the Marine Corps Command and Staff College, bring them to the Marine Corps Amphibious Warfare College, bring them to the National Defense University, bring them to Fort Leavenworth, bring them to Carlisle, bring them to any place where American military leaders are being educated about modern warfare so that they understand the reality of drones and begin to immediately make the changes necessary to incorporate drone technology so that we're not overwhelmed. But that's not happening. What the Russians are doing is that they have a tremendous system in place where, as lessons are learned on the battlefield, personnel are being pulled out of the battlefield and going to the institutions of higher military education to rewrite doctrine, to sit down with the general staffs, to sit down with the colonels, and to come up with practical applications that can be quantified, put down in writing, and sent back so everybody's operating off the same sheet of music. And then Russia is inviting their new partners to come in and attend these institutions. So those people are learning. I would imagine that Russia at some point in time will put together mobile training teams that will go around the world to the various places and teach them about what Russia's learned on the battlefield, and then listen too, because the Houthi have been using drones, the Iranians have been using drones. Learn from them this cross-fertilization of ideas. Everything Russia has learned about incorporating the Shahed drones into their suppression of enemy air defense and their strategic strike capabilities are lessons that can be given to the Iranians and be incorporated into any future attack options that they plan on using against regional targets. So I think again, Russia's probably a world leader when it comes to incorporating lessons learned about drones, training its own military, and sharing that data with its allies.
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.